Hello everyone and welcome back to the 3T Path channel and welcome back to our Uddhava-gita course. My name is Giridhari. And what we're doing today is that Krishna is going to start to tell Uddhava about the Hamsa Avatar, the Swan Avatar, a little known avatar with a very beautiful philosophical edge to it. So it's a very interesting, unique kind of avatar you don't hear about much. So we're starting that today, the Hamsa Avatar story. So it's a very important class, don't miss it. And if you want to watch all the previous classes, make sure you join our Bhakti Club. And the instructions are here in the description of the video. And also you can go to Uddhava-gita.com and you can see the whole Uddhava-gita course. This is class 61 already. There are 60 classes already available. Very rich content. Okay, so we're in the 11th canto, 13th chapter, verse 17. The sages headed by Sanaka said, "O Lord," they're talking to Lord Brahma. So the four Kumaras have approached Lord Brahma. We did that in the last class, and they have a question they want to ask Lord Brahma. So the sages headed by Sanaka said, "O Lord, people's minds are naturally attracted to material sense objects. And similarly, the sense objects in the form of desire enter within the mind. Therefore, how can a person who desires liberation, who desires to cross over activities of sense gratification, destroy this mutual relationship between the sense objects and the mind? Please explain this to us." So this is a great question. This question is really good. And it's such a good question that a whole avatar is going to come down just to answer it. That's how great a question it is. So look at their question. They figured out, they said, look, we see that there's this very intense relationship, a mutual relationship between the mind and the sense objects. What happens is, the mind is attracted to the sense objects. I mean, sense objects means like all the stuff you do, in forgetfulness of your spiritual life. Everything that you're doing out here. Everything from watching TV, walking, cooking, eating, sleeping, having sex, whatever you do, like all the engagements the body has with the material world. So the mind is naturally attracted to sense objects, right? I mean, the mind is always trying to watch something, see something, hear something, taste something, feel something, right? We're always doing this. So we're naturally attracted to sense objects. And we notice that the sense objects in the form of desire, so that was a nice perception they had, like the desire, the sense objects enter the mind in the form of desire, and then the mind wants the sense objects, and the sense objects enter the mind through desire. So there's this thing going on, but they've already understood. These are great sages. They were born great sages. And when the Kumaras, they came to, they were the first creatures of this universe, the first four created creatures by Lord Brahma. And they were already dedicated to spiritual life and to seeking liberation. So they understood from the get-go that engagement with material life was a problem, and they're trying to figure it out here, and that's why they're asking their father, Lord Brahma, about these things. So they understand that if you just stay engaged, if you maintain this engagement with sense gratification, with just doing stuff in the material world in forgetfulness of your soul and God, then you're going to stay here forever doing that. It never ends. It's the cycle. You're stuck, right? You're stuck here. So to do that, if you desire liberation, if you desire to cross over activities of sense gratification, they understand, look, we have to cross over this. We have to, how do we deal with it? If we don't overcome this thing, this mutual relationship between the mind and the sense object, if we don't overcome this, we're not going to get out of here. We're stuck. So how do we, so they understand this. So please, how do we undo, how do we destroy this mutual relationship between the mind and the sense objects? So it's a great expression. So it's a great question. Purport. As described above, as long as one is a conditioned soul, so you have this term, conditioned soul. What does that mean? A soul that is conditioned, has the condition to become attached to matter. So it's conditioned to matter, attached to matter, involved with matter, stuck in this mutual relationship. As long as one is a conditioned soul, the modes of the material nature, the gunas, manifested in the form of sense objects, constantly disturb the mind. And by their harassment, one is deprived of the actual perfection of life. So remember that we were talking, this is verse 17. Why are we talking about the Hamsa Avatar in verse 17 and not like, let's say, verse 1? Why didn't it just start with this topic? Because this chapter, Krishna has been telling Uddhava about the gunas. We've had some very important classes on the gunas. If you missed them, make sure you watch them because it's really important you understand the influence of the gunas of material nature on the mind and how that works so you can get out of here, so you can develop your spiritual life. It's a super important topic. So you were talking about that, and now, so then it kind of fits in. So then Uddhava was asking a question, so how are we going to work this out? The gunas. So then that's how the Hamsa Avatar comes up in this topic, in this chapter. Okay, verse 18. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Uddhava, Brahma himself, who is born directly from the body of the Lord, and who is the creator of all living entities within the material world, being the best of the demigods, seriously contemplated the question of his sons headed by Sanaka. The intelligence of Brahma, however, was affected by his own activities of creation, and thus he could not discover the essential answer to this question." So this is really great. So again, this is Lord Brahma, right, which Krishna himself is qualifying here. This is an important person, Lord Brahma, born directly from the Lord, creator of all living beings in this universe, best of demigods. So this is the top person in the whole universe. And he seriously contemplated this question, and he's just like, this is a really good question. He wanted to give a good answer, but he himself was influenced by his own activities. I mean, he was so involved. I mean, this is a busy guy. I mean, think of a CEO being busy, like trying to administer this big Fortune 500 company. Lord Brahma is trying to administer the whole universe. So you think it's a big deal, like being the CEO of Apple or something. This guy is the CEO of the whole universe. He's got a lot on his mind, right? He's trying to create and maintain this entire universe with, like endless numbers of galaxies. This is hard work. And he had to do the whole, the structure of it. He had to do that as well. He had to build the structure, the galaxies, and he had to do that stuff. And populate the place, fill the universe with population and make sure everybody's things are working out. Hard work. So his mind was a bit too involved in these acts of creation. His senses, sense objects, his mind was also involved with all these sense objects of his work, so he couldn't come up with a good question. He could not discover the essential answer to this question. Purport. Srila Jiva Goswami. So Jiva Goswami is a very important guru in our lineage, going all the way back to the Middle Ages. Very important. Has quoted 3 verses from the 2nd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam as follows. In the 9th chapter, verse 32, Lord Krishna blessed Brahma with realized knowledge of the Lord's actual form, qualities, and activities. In the 9th chapter, verse 37, the Lord ordered Brahma to rigidly carry out the Lord's injunctions and affirmed that Brahma would thus never be bewildered in his cosmic decision-making. In the 6th chapter, verse 34, Lord Brahma assured his son Narada, "O Narada, because I have caught hold of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, with great zeal, whatever I say has never proved to have been false, nor is the progress of my mind ever deterred, nor are my senses ever degraded by temporary attachment to matter." So Jiva Goswami has quoted these 3 verses. In the present verse, in this 13th chapter of the 11th canto, Lord Krishna states that Brahma unfortunately did become bewildered by his creative functions, thus providing a grave lesson to all of the Lord's empowered representatives. Although one may be elevated to an exalted position in the Lord's transcendental service, at any moment there is danger of false pride polluting one's devotional mentality. What a great lesson. This is Jiva Goswami. They were just thinking outside of the box. So they see this verse and you're like, wait a second, what about all those other verses that Lord Brahma, the Lord is, himself is saying, Lord Brahma won't get confused, and Brahma is saying, look, I'm not going to get confused, I'm completely focused, I'm never going to get bewildered. And you say, look, all these things were there, and still he got confused. So you can never be too careful. It's a great lesson, because it's true. We can never be too careful. I mean, I've been around for many decades, and I've seen power, these big gurus falling. It happens all the time. So you have to be very humble. You have to always be aware and attentive. Never think like, oh no, I got it now, I'm enlightened. I tell my students, the worst thing, if somebody says that they're like an enlightened free being, you just run away in the opposite direction. Because anybody who says that, either they're just completely crazy or they're just lying. And if you believe that, then you're a fool, because you just get away. You're just being influenced, just being, beguiled. Just run away. So don't let anybody, oh yes, I'm an enlightened pure being, and oh God, just run away from a person like that, because they're crazy. And they're, they're already fallen just for saying that. But they're going to commit all sorts of nonsense for sure. So very interesting lesson that Jiva Goswami brought us from this simple verse. Okay, so Lord Brahma couldn't figure it out. And you have to remember, this is Lord Brahma. These are the 4 Kumaras, and this is Lord Brahma. These are the most intelligent, most advanced people in the entire universe. So if they can't figure it out, what can you do? There is nobody else. There's nobody else to call on. The 4 Kumaras are super high up. They're super sages, super cosmic primeval sages. And Lord Brahma is the primeval being who starts the whole universe. If they can't figure it out, then who are you going to call, right? Well, you have to call the Lord. Lord Brahma desired to attain the answer to the question that was puzzling him. And thus he fixed his mind on me, the Supreme Lord. At that time, in my form of Hamsa, I became visible to Lord Brahma. So who are you going to call? You're going to call Krishna. If you can't figure it out, you have to call Krishna. So Lord Brahma says, I can't figure this out. So, who are you going to call? He calls Krishna. Krishna, this is a good question. This is an important question. So this is very interesting. This is an avatar that appears only in front of 5 people. Very special avatar. All the other, if you look at, Leela avatars like Rama and Leela, and have these epics around them, and, like so many other things going on, and other avatars participating, and, universe-changing events, like all these powerful things, or Nrsimhadevis and Varaha, all these powerful, universe-changing historic moments. But this is a very interesting avatar that is completely philosophical and only appears in front of 5 people, the 4 Kumaras and Lord Brahma. Very high level. This is like at the top, right? The very top, the last floor, the penthouse of the universe, 5 people, and Lord Hamsa is going to appear. So Krishna says, he fixed his mind on me, and then I appeared in my form of Lord Hamsa. Hamsa means swan. And the specific ability of the swan is to separate a mixture of milk and water, extracting the rich, milky portion. So this is a funny thing. I've talked about this before, but this is a thing that's there in the tradition. Biologically, it's probably not, completely explainable, but they had this idea that a swan could separate milk from water. I guess you can, right? Because if you mix water with milk, all the nutrients of the milk are still there, and you just drink it all, and naturally your body does separate milk from water. But I think, anybody does that, right? Like a monkey and a dog and a cat and a person and a human. But anyway, for some reason, swans are these amazing, beautiful, graceful creatures. And for some reason, then the swan became this symbol of wisdom, of spiritual wisdom. It's always there. It's just something that's there. And you can see it goes all the way back to the Hamsa avatar. So, why does Krishna appears as a swan? Because the swan is so the image. So you also hear, like, when somebody's honorific title of a spiritual person is like a swan-like person, Hamsa. You'll hear like Hamsa is one of the titles of a spiritually advanced person. Sometimes they'll be giving that honorific title of swan, Hamsa. So it's a thing. It's a thing in Vedic culture, and because of this idea that they could separate the milk from water. In other words, they can take reality and get the best of it out. They can figure things out. They can, get the best out of everything. Best out of knowledge, of reality. They can extract the essence of reality. So this idea was there. And it's always this thing of the milk and water. So, Hamsa. So he's the swan avatar. Similarly, Lord Krishna appeared as Hamsa, or the swan, in order to separate the pure consciousness of Lord Brahma from the modes of material nature. So that's the idea. It's beautiful, poetic imagery. So Lord, he appears as a swan because he's going to help Lord Brahma separate his pure consciousness from the modes. Remember, all of you can do that. All of you, we all have our pure consciousness, because consciousness is pure. Consciousness is spiritual. There's no such thing as consciousness in matter. Consciousness is transcendental. It's the soul. It is you. It's the real you. It's the spiritual being, the Atman, the Purusha. So you are transcendental consciousness. You are pure consciousness. However, we are now covered. So material nature is covering our pure consciousness. Gunas. They're covering. They didn't mix really, but they're covering. So you have to separate, you have to extricate your pure consciousness from the gunas. And that's what we're doing with, with this beautiful transcendental knowledge and all the practices of the 3T path. That's, following Bhagavad-gita and Krishna's instructions is just so we can do exactly this, all of us. But here specifically, Lord Brahma, got some direct help from Krishna so he could see the answer. But now it's really funny what happens. I think this is hilarious what happens next. So check this out. Verse 20. Thus seeing me, the sages, placing Brahma in the lead, came forward and worshipped my lotus feet. Then they frankly asked me, "Who are you?" So this is a great scene. I love this. So here you are, again, this is at the penthouse of the universe. Lord Brahma, the four Kumaras, this is like, people don't just barge in on them. This isn't like they're just not hanging out in some yoga studio in downtown. No, this is like, Brahma Loka. This is like a very secluded, talk about a gated community. This is a very special place. And it's just Lord Brahma and the four Kumaras. Again, these are like the most important, powerful people in the entire universe. And then all of a sudden, this swan or swan-like being appears. And they're like, Lord Brahma. So they, put Lord Brahma in front because that's the, proper etiquette, like the most important person in front. So Lord Brahma goes in front and they're like, this person to show up like this, it must be an important person. So, just to be polite, we'll worship the feet, pay obeisances. But they're like, who are you? Like, what? Because they never heard of a Hamsa. Like, what? Why is there a giant swan person or just a swan? Why is there like a swan or swan person here? Who are you? So it's really funny. And the answer is really funny as well. Purport. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, now he's a spiritual master from the beginning of the last century, comments, when Brahma was unable to answer the question placed by the sages, he fixed his mind and thought of the Supreme Lord. The Lord then assumed the form of Hamsa and appeared before Lord Brahma and the sages, who proceeded to inquire about the specific identity of the Lord. Verse 21. My dear Uddhava, the sages, being eager to understand the ultimate truth of the yoga system, thus inquired from me. Now please hear as I explain that which I spoke unto the sages. Verse 22. Okay, so now this is Hamsa answering the question, who are you? And just like from just that simple question, who are you? The answer already invokes all this beautiful philosophy and understanding. My dear Brahmanas, if when asking me who I am, you believe that I'm also a jiva soul, and that there's no ultimate difference between us, since all souls are ultimately one without individuality, then how is your question possible or appropriate? It's like, wow, what a way to answer the question, who are you, right? So this is, who are you? Says, my name is Giridhari, that's hi. No, who are you? And then look at his answer. So look, if you understand that I'm a jiva soul, and that there's no difference between us, if you're thinking that all souls are ultimately one without individuality, if you are an Advaitin, he's saying, if you have, because the four Kumaras, in the beginning, they were kind of monistic Advaitin, they weren't quite devoted yet. So if you think we're just the same, then how is your question possible or appropriate? I mean, why do you ask, who are you, if we're just the same, we're one? who are you? Who are you? Well, who are you? I mean, we're the same. So why are you asking who are you when you and I are the same? Get it? So why would you ask who are you if we're all the same? So how would it be appropriate? Ultimately, what is the real situation or resting place, both of yourselves and of me? Wow, it's like, what? I just asked, who are you? And he can, why does it make any sense that you're asking a question if we're all the same? And ultimately, what is the real situation or resting place of both yourselves and of me? So, blowing their minds away. He gets there. They ask a silly question, who are you? Obviously, he's God. I mean, who else would just show up like that? He does not that many people in the universe yet. So anyway, blows their minds away. Purport. Ashraya means the resting place or shelter. Lord Krishna's question, the Hamsa, Lord Hamsa's question, what is our actual resting place or shelter, means what is our ultimate nature, our constitutional position. This is because no one can come to rest or be satisfied unless one is in one's natural position. The example is given that one may travel all over the world, but ultimately one becomes satisfied by returning to one's own home. Similarly, a crying child is satisfied when embraced by its own mother. By inquiring about the shelter or resting place of himself and the Brahmanas, the Lord is indicating the eternal constitutional position of every living entity. So this is a beautifully explained point. Right? What is our true nature? What are we really supposed to be doing? Who are we really? Not just externally, not like karmically speaking, but who are we really in our deepest nature? Because until we understand that and we live that reality, we will never be satisfied. And this is one of the very reasons why we are in the spiritual life, why we are doing this path, why you are watching this video. It's because we're trying to find out who we really are and situate ourselves in that position, because it is who we are. And then we finally feel complete, satisfied, and whole and contented when we are in that situation. That's exactly what I've felt, I experienced and felt by following this path, and what my students feel when everybody and people have been feeling it for millions of years. Because, we think it's been going on for millions of years. So that's what you feel when you practice spiritual life. It's a very important point. If Lord Krishna were also in the jiva category, like a soul, like you and me, and if all living entities, including him, were thus equal, there would be no deep purpose in one living entity inquiring and another answering. Only one who is in a superior position can meaningfully answer important questions. It may be argued that the bona fide spiritual master answers all the questions of the disciple, and yet the guru is in the jiva category. The answer is that the bona fide spiritual master speaks not on his own behalf, but as a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is in the Vishnu category. A so-called guru speaking on his own behalf as a jiva soul is useless and is unable to meaningfully answer serious questions. This is a very important point. This is a very important point. You need to have somebody, just jiva to jiva won't work. You need to have Lord to jiva to get the serious answers to the serious questions. But then the guru is jiva. So how does that work? Well, the guru is saying the Lord's words. I mean, here we are literally reading the Lord's teaching. So that's what makes a guru, true guru. He is repeating, representing the Lord, not with his own ideas or his mind, but by literally bringing and explaining the Lord's teachings. That's how it works. That's why we're studying Uddhava-gita, not, the me-gita or the somebody else down the corner, Joe's gita. We're studying, this gita because it's spoken by Krishna to Uddhava. And we study the Bhagavad-gita because we want to hear Krishna's explanations. We study Bhagavad Purana and Bhagavad Gita because we're hearing directly from the Lord. And then we can repeat those instructions and explain them. That's what the Guru does. And that's where the power comes. So we have to have, so there's this Jiva category and a God category. There's the souls and gods. You have to understand there's a difference. Otherwise, just soul speaking to soul wouldn't do the trick, would it? And because the sages headed by Lord Brahma offered obeisances, go back a bit. Thus the sage's question, Ko Bhavan, who are you, indicates that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is eternally an individual person. And because the sages headed by Lord Brahma offered obeisances and worshiped the Lord, it is understood that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Brahma, as the first created being in this universe, could not accept any other living entity except the Lord as worshipable, because Lord Brahma is the number one guy in the universe. It starts with him. Nobody can be more than him. He's the one who started the whole thing. Everybody's his descendant living in the universe that he built with his own hands, as it were. So if he's going to worship someone, that someone has to be God. Lord Krishna's actual purpose is to explain the ultimate perfection of yoga, which the sages were desiring to know. If one becomes fixed in transcendental knowledge, the mutual attraction between the material mind and the material sense objects automatically ceases. The spiritual mind is not attracted to material existence, to material objects of gratification, and thus by spiritualizing the mind, material existence automatically slackens. By questioning the propriety of the sage's question, the Lord is assuming the position of the spiritual master and preparing to give valuable instructions. One should never be envious of a bona fide spiritual master, especially if, as in the case of Lord Hamsa speaking to the sages headed by Brahma and Sanak Kumara, the Guru is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Very good. So we'll stop here. Wonderful. The wonderful teachings coming ahead. So make sure you come back next week if Krishna permits, and we'll continue with the teachings of Lord Hamsa. And have a rest of your day with lots of peace and lots of love. Hare Krishna.